Welcome to this leadership conversation brought to you by the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. My name is Drishti Rupadas. I am joined today by a leader whose career spans global financial institutions and international markets. Our guest today is Ms. Souad Benkredda, the member of the management board at DZ Bank. Ms. Benkredda brings with her extensive experience on global markets, strategy, and leadership. It is a pleasure to have her with us today. Thank you so much for joining us today, Souad.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think we should immediately start with your leadership journey, and that you've built your leadership journey across global financial institutions and environments that are traditionally male dominated. So looking back, what were those habits and decisions that helped you to earn the credibility and the authority so early on?
Yeah, so if you define a leadership role as the first team that I have managed in my career, then this was at Deutsche Bank at the age of 26, which is arguably pretty young.
Absolutely.
And the advice that I would give to anybody, whether you're in a leadership role or not, is threefold when you work in financial markets. So number one is to be competent at what you're doing. So that's the most important thing. You need to know your content. Number two is that you need to enjoy what you're doing. It's very, very important. And there's a saying from Confucius, which is find a job that you like and you will never have to work again. And I personally think that is so true. And then number three is to stay authentic. So if you combine all three, you know your content, you love what you're doing, and you stay authentic, then I think this is a great way to advance wherever you are, whether you're in finance, in banking, or even another sector. I think these three as a combination are very important, and it certainly helped me in my career.
That's so beautiful, and thank you for putting that so candidly.
Thank you.
And just building on that, I would like to know that you've actually led through periods of market volatility, global uncertainty, and periods that were really there were rapid changes, if I can put it that way. So, as a leader in the leadership role, what would you personally say? How do you balance the analytical rigor with instinct, and especially when your decisions, they have real consequences?
So looking at my career, I started in 2001 at Deutsche Bank on the market side with a graduate program in London. That was in September 2001. So live, whilst I was in London, there have been the 9/11 attacks. That was obviously a very big event. And then we went through the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009 with repercussions throughout many years. And then we've had COVID who hit us in 2019. And then obviously looking even at 2025, we see big geopolitical uncertainty. So it's important to view this uncertainty not as a big issue, but more to ask yourself the question, how can I navigate through this? And what can I offer my clients? Because the clients, they are looking for solutions and for partners who help them navigate these uncertainties. And there what I find is very important. Again, the most important thing is you try to understand to the best of your ability what's going on. So get your content first. Do it in a very unemotional way. So you have to analyze, as you said, analyzing is very important. And then, secondly, try to always put yourself into the shoes of the client. So you're not just there for the sake of being a person working in banking, you're there to help your clients. So what do the clients want? How can you help them? And it might not be your generic solution. It could be a very specific solution, and you need to take the time to think about that and come up with something really useful, which adds value and that gives you purpose as well, which I think is very nice. And then overall, I think it's important to always approach things with a calm mind. Unless you're very calm, you do not think very straight. And unless you don't think very straight, you won't be able to offer good advice to your clients. So it is extremely important to break down a supposedly big issue into components and then prioritize them and focus and come up with something very specific, especially in volatile times. And the clients do appreciate that. And personally, I actually enjoy that a lot. And whenever we come up with a solution and the client is happy, that actually also makes me happy.
That is a very valuable perspective, and towards the clients actually. And during those times, you also have to take the organization along, your team along, especially when the path forward is not very obvious. How do you do that?
Yeah, so as you asked me earlier, and I think that's a very valid point, so the decisions that you make, they have a repercussion. And now I'm a board member at DZ Bank, and the decisions not only have a business repercussion, they also have a personal repercussion, which I think is absolutely fine. And I'm very thankful to God for all the responsibility that I have. But then obviously, in my view, you need to take action, because it would be very unfair to sit in a decision-making role without taking any action. That's part of my job, and that's why I have this position. So I don't shy away from taking also tough positions, be it in terms of maybe taking actions when it comes to team structure or so, or also being very brave and looking into another market or going into another market, because I firmly believe that this is my role and I should be doing that. And the decision might be uncomfortable, but it has to be taken. And I think this ability to take decisions in a way that is also brave is also good for the team and for the clients, because you're making progress. However, my major point is whenever I make decisions, I do not take them blindly. So I do not get rushed in making my decision. I can take it very quickly if I have all the facts and I'm certain. And we're all human beings. You can always make mistakes, but you need to get your facts right, then you make a decision. If I don't have my facts, or I don't think I have enough facts that can lead me to an effective decision, I do not take it. Because it's like going into something and without seeing everything. So the most important thing is you're willing to take a decision, but only based on facts that you think you need to have in order to take a decision. And if you don't have these facts, you better wait. And I think asking questions is not a weakness, it's a strength, actually.
That is such a grounded way to look at leadership under pressure. Thank you for putting that articulating it so clearly. Thank you so much. That long-term perspective actually brings me to the term sustainability.
Yes.
A term that's discussed in broad ways most of the time, but from your perspective, what does it actually mean in practice?
So that's a very good question, and I think it's great that you ask it, because probably a lot of the listeners might also be thinking, what does it really mean when they talk about sustainable finance, sustainability? What does it concretely mean? Sometimes when there is a topic which is a little bit complex, it's good to break it down in very simple ways. And looking at the term sustainable, it just really means sustainable. It means something that you will be able to do in the future, not just today, because it is sustainable in the sheer origin of the word. So when you look at the word sustainable, it really means sustainable in the sense that there is future of whatever you're doing. You're not just doing it today, you will be able to do it in the long-term future, because whatever you're doing is sustainable. And the role of banks and other financial intermediaries is to finance a sustainable world in general. So there is this term ESG that you might have heard, which describes this very well. And it's got three components of sustainability: ecological, social, and governance. So it means ecological could be, for example, green financing, renewable energy financing. And then the governance piece means that the bodies who are making the decisions should have a proper governance. So they have to be, it needs to make sure that they are no conflicts of interest, that there is a proper solid governance put in place. And the social financing could, for example, be for schools or for hospitals. So anything which adds a benefit into one of these three components can be classified as sustainable finance. And then there are particular instruments, for example, ESG bonds, sustainable bonds, that could be mapped to the E or the S or the G, for example, that get issued by the issuer, that would pay concretely into one of these three sustainability goals. And that would then be a sustainable bond. And there are investors globally who are looking specifically for these ESG bonds, and they would buy them. We call them green investors or sustainable investors, because they want to help the sustainability cause. And if you look at the world, due to the geopolitical, let's say, shifts in 2025, starting 2025, there is less of an ESG agenda being pushed by the US, but more in Europe. And I think together with other very large economies such as India, we could drive the ESG agenda forward, Europe or Germany, together with India, because ESG will not disappear. It will stay there. It is so important for the future generations for us to live in a world which is sustainable. And hence, I think when others are backing up, and that's their right, they can do that, we should actually be doubling down with large economies such as India on ESG, because at the end of the day, we're doing something good for the world, for the future, for the planet, and for the next generations.
Okay, and do you think that should naturally bring up the question that I have in my mind about a cooperative banking model? How does that actually help in meaningfully supporting cross-border growth?
Yeah, so if you look at the origins of cooperative models, it's beautiful. So imagine you've got a small village and there are farmers, and each of them cannot buy to afford a large expensive machine. So the ideas of the cooperative model is to group forces together and to buy something that one could not afford. In fact, one of the logos or the credos that we have, one of the sentences is, together we can do more. And what one cannot achieve can be achieved together. So in my example, they would group together, and each of them would pay a little bit of money so that they can afford this big machine, and then the machine would be used by all of them. And that's so beautiful as an idea, to come together and make something affordable by grouping together interest. So that's the broad idea of the cooperative model. And it's not just a German phenomenon, now it's global. So for example, we've got a company called Geste, which is gesture, if you translate it into English, G-E-S-T, and it helps cooperatives globally, together with the German government, to exactly foster this idea of cooperative banks, or it could be other cooperatives globally. And as I said, we do that together with the German government, and we want to export this great idea of a cooperative into other economies as well.
That is so beautiful.
Yes.
It's almost tangible.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
It is absolutely tangible, and you can apply it not just to the agricultural world that I've just mentioned. You can, maybe in India you've also got supermarkets. In the UK there's the co-op supermarket. And that's exactly the idea. So lots of small suppliers have grouped together, because otherwise they could not compete in terms of having a supermarket chain, etc. And that's the cooperative chain. And whenever I go and buy at a cooperative, because I live in the UK, I just went to a cooperative yesterday, co-op shop, you feel good, because you think you're supporting this idea of doing something together and making the people, the individual people who really stand behind a business idea more powerful, because they have grouped themselves together into a powerful cooperative. I think it's very nice.
It's very wholesome.
Yes.
And that actually brings me to my last question, and it's focused on the next generation leaders. You have worked across borders, you've led teams globally. When you look at the next generation leaders, especially women who are aspiring to operate on international stage, what kind of mindset do you think matters the most?
Yeah. So remember what we said earlier about the 3 factors which I believe are very important to have a successful career. We said authenticity, and then we said that you need to be strong in your content, and we said passion. So you have to really like what you're doing. So let's say, so these 3 factors, in my view, that have helped me a lot when I started my career in 2001, are as valid today as they were more than a quarter of a century. But for example, the point on authenticity is not always rosy. So you could feel, yes, I'm different because I'm a minority, or maybe I don't get accepted, but it's not a weakness, it's a strength, and you will see this over time. This is exactly what differentiates you. So in my view, the future leaders should keep a positive mindset, not of maybe frustration, no, I don't belong there, I wouldn't do it that way, but more, I am different and that's a strength. And how can I use this? Because I know my content, I am brave, I am passionate about what I'm doing, and yes, I'm different, but that's a key differentiating factor and not a weakness. That's what I think.
That is such a beautiful thing to end our conversation with. And
Thank you.
do you think you would like to wrap up this conversation by sharing a few words with the aspiring leaders, the next generation leaders who are probably watching our show right now, watching this conversation right now?
Yes, I'm very happy to do that. Dear listeners, thank you very much for listening to us. What I would like to share is the following. So I'm sure you might be thinking, this is a very volatile time and we have seen geopolitical shifts over the past few years. How will the future be? And my answer to you is the future will be as you shape it, because you are the leaders. So rather than feel intimidated or maybe almost drawn back by this volatility, it's all in your hands. You are the leaders and we need you. We need you to be brave, passionate about shaping the future in a sustainable way, as we said it earlier, for the generation to follow yours. So I'd like to encourage you to stay authentic, stay very content-oriented, stay brave, and stay passionate about what you're doing, because the world needs you. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Souad. It was such an insightful conversation and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be in India, and I really enjoyed our conversation, especially the way you were asking the questions very openly. And I think you are just a wonderful role model yourself, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
We shall.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again.
Leadership today is about responsibility, perspective, and the courage to think long term. If you are an aspiring leader or a business navigating global markets, I really hope that today's discussion gave you some perspective to reflect upon and act on. Do share your thoughts with us in the comments. And for more such leadership conversations and perspectives on the Indo-German landscape, keep following our YouTube channel and our social media handles. Thank you very much for watching.